Well, well, isn't this an interesting wrinkle? We have a new trailer, a teaser for a vehicle coming to Gran Turismo 7 later this year. We don't have any more specific dates or even a month at the moment as far as when it will be, but sometime in 2024 is the word. And the funny thing is, I actually talked about this car about 4 years ago, back in 2020, January of 2020 no less, a Sony car. Now we have more news about it in terms of its collaboration with Polyphony, not only in the game, but in real life as well. If it carries over anything from back then, which it might not, because the news page on Gran Turismo doesn't really get into any of this stuff, but from what I recall, and double checking in that video from back in 2020, at least at that time, and you could assume it should be at least what it was back then, if not better, was actually quite an impressive car in terms of its spec. 540 horsepower, all-wheel drive, not too surprisingly, of course, fully electric vehicle, twin motor in particular, fairly hefty, not too surprising given the battery packs, etc. About 2.3, 2.4 tons or so. So very much so similar to a high-performance Tesla. In fact, it would be a pretty nice rival for the recently added Tesla Model 3. There's a little bit of cannibalization going on there. You've got Tesla versus Sony, Polyphony within their own game, but it'd be interesting to see what it can do. In terms of the visuals, it definitely has the same shape, the same overall silhouette that it had back in 2020, but the front end in particular definitely looks different. It has a cleaner, almost to me, like a Kia or Hyundai looking kind of front end now, whereas before it had a kind of jutting out snout back in 2020, and you can see that of course in that old news video that I did. In terms of the rollout at the moment of news, of course we have this teaser trailer from the Gran Turismo channel that you can see here. This is, as I said, a partnership between Sony and Polyphony, and they actually announced this vehicle in a press release yesterday in Vegas regarding their future plans to produce the car, and they want it to be available incidentally within the game before the car becomes available to purchase in real life. That is one of the most interesting aspects in terms of ascertaining when the car could arrive, because that will mean that moving forward we should be able to have a reasonably good idea of when in the year it could arrive if we take a look at when they are announcing the real car. So it could be way off, but at least once we do know the general idea of when it should be released, maybe like a first run of cars or something, you could logically assume, if they stick to this plan, we should get it in the game before that point. I'm personally expecting it probably not for at least 5 or 6 months, probably latter half of the year, but we'll have to wait and see ultimately. I know for many people they won't really care too much. We've had a whole lot of electric stuff happening in the game recently. Of course, with the 2 recent Vision GTs, we've had this one coming up again, the Tesla itself recently added. They're not exactly the most popular things, generally speaking, and the one thing that I find most curious of all about all of this news, and the one thing which I'd like to say in terms of cutting through any potential negativity, is this. At the moment, in Gran Turismo, and even in the past games, electric cars, despite showing up here and there, and sometimes being pretty good, probably, I would say maybe most notably, the Tajima E-Runner being clearly a fantastic rally car, they are extremely badly implemented in the game in terms of having any kind of longer event use. That is what I'm curious about. Does this move toward having, much like real life, more and more hybrids, more and more in particular electric vehicles? Does that mean they're going to have to rethink how they represent these cars in the game? Because in order for people to like them, they're going to need a reason to use them. For me, for example, as good as the Tajima was in GT6, I would much rather be using the Volkswagen IDR very frequently in Gran Turismo 7. It's a fantastic car in other games, such as Forza, and it's one of the coolest Volkswagens ever made. Forget the fact that it's electric, just look at the kind of lap times that thing could do at Pikes Peak, at the Nürburgring. It's a phenomenal car, looks like an LMP machine. I love it, of course, being a VW fan anyway. But even that, as fantastic as it is next to useless for most races in Gran Turismo. So I think they're going to have to rethink how they approach putting electric cars into the game, because they can keep doing what they are doing, in which case people will just roll their eyes at the thought of a new electric car, which, let's be honest, that's not really what they want. It'll end up being just like Vision GTs for many people, which would be a shame, because even though I do prefer traditional engines over electric, I've driven some electric cars which I did like. I've certainly driven some electric motorcycles which I really liked, and some of them are very impressive. The Neo EP9, the aforementioned Volkswagen, of course the Rimac, these are fantastic vehicles. but in the game they're just not that useful. So I'm very curious to see how and if that changes in future, and for now we have at least news of this additional vehicle coming to the game in future. Give me your thoughts down below, of course. Love to stick around and see when it does drop, and until next time we'll see you then. But for now, thanks for watching.